Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Agents of Dev. I'm Mitch Ashley. Good to be here with my co-host Brad Shimmin. Welcome, Brad. Good morning, good afternoon.
Hey there, Mitch. How you doing?
I'm doing well. You're on the East Coast, so but as far as I know, it could be afternoon there. I know it's not afternoon, but it feels like it. The day's been long already. Too much Claude code.
So I blame the time zone change. Spring forward is messing me up.
That definitely messes us up, especially our dogs. They're always like, so when is time to eat? Just like tell us. We're over trying to guess.
They did not agree to this. Yeah.
Yeah, their representatives in Congress did not vote for this, but okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. We have some good call out stuff, so jump in. I think you have some information about talking about what, Teradata?
Yeah, right. One of my favorite companies, because I think this is anyone who's been in the data professional space for long knows who Teradata is, and they I think have done a great job of transforming themselves into a modern open data platform provider, and they, like everybody, have realized the importance of bringing data to AI, particularly in support of agentic workflows and building anything agentic in nature. And like everybody, they've said they've cottoned on to the idea of vector stores and embeddings and the importance of that for semantic search. But unlike everybody, they also recognize that it's not the only type of data. It's a representation of data. And that data might be structured in a relational database, might be unstructured, video, audio, et cetera. It might be semi-structured in JSON. And so they've updated. They've been working on this for a year, but they've brought a pretty big upgrade this week, or this past week, probably just this past
week or so. Week or so. We'll go there.
Yeah, it's hard to know because
we don't even know if it's morning or afternoon, more or less a week.
But it is all the same, actually. Yeah. So, yeah, they have this really neat idea that I've seen from other companies like Oracle, and they've done a good job with this. And that is a hybrid search capability that basically lets you do like traditional keyword matching and semantic search in a conjoined manner instead of having to, go get something and then pipe it on. You're basically treating it as a single retrieval so that you can bring to your agents a context that is much more accurate. And what do we get from that? Less hallucination. So that is my call out. My tip of the hat goes out to those guys.
Let me ask you, so because you look at all the databases, and I don't spend time in just kind of the database world. Have they all sort of adopted the unstructured data, or we'll look at anything? We'll look at your .md files, we'll look at your JSON, we'll look at your structured into tables and columns and rows and et cetera. What's the state of the industry?
Ugh. Yeah, so the NoSQL versus SQL still kind of persists, but it's not with the same fervor that we saw earlier, and all the full stack app dev folks kind of said, "Hey, we want this," and MongoDB shot up.
Right.
It's I think more of a case of optimizing for the use case, and you may find yourself in need of a graph database, for instance, that can scale to a certain degree, and you may not get that degree of concurrency and lack of latency guarantees if you're running it as an add-on or a plugin within Postgres, for instance.
Interesting.
So maybe you want a pure play. So it's this specialization versus I would say not commoditization, because it's not that. It's or even consolidation. It's more what Oracle calls converged database, and most humans call multimodal databases, wherein they can handle all the different indexing simultaneously together. It's kind of the idea that we're seeing play out right now with the whole open data lakehouse. Once you slapped on ACID, guarantees for transactions.
Mhm.
Can it really not to do anything? It can do everything. So let's just throw all our data into these open data lake houses
Yeah.
and work with it, but not
That
for
may
every
be
use
what's
case,
driving
not for
my
every.
perception. Yeah, is that whole like it's all accessible and because it's in a data lake, but it's got the ACID constraints on it.
Yep. Yep. So
Interesting.
it's a new era. I think it's a nice time to be building right now, simply because we don't have the same sort of technical debt or inertia that's associated with making a heavy investment in a single database management system with an emphasis on the management system.
Excellent. Well, my call out is OpenAI. I can't talk. OpenAI is set to acquire a company called PromptFu. First of all, whoever named
Awesome.
that company gets the T-shirt of the week for sure. PromptFu.
So
I'm thinking,
your prompt
okay, now we
foo
can have.
beats my prompt foo.
Well, then we're gonna have prompt Foo Fighters, of course, aren't we?
Exactly.
So, anyway, what jumps up to me about this one is that PromptFu is basically a security agent or technology, if you will, about making sure that the interfaces to the LLM, what agents are doing as they're going through the development pipeline, going into CI/CD processes,
Mm,
trying to constrain. I would, in my terms, constrain from a security standpoint what the agents, what the calls, whether they're APIs or direct prompts going through code. However that's working, could be through web scraping, whatever method. How if it's being done securely. Now, what those
mm.
constraints are and how you control those, I don't know yet because I haven't had a chance to really kind of dig into it and understand how PromptFu works. But I guess when it finds a problem, it says, this is foo and that's not. Here's your daily foo report.
This is bar, not foo.
Yeah. But it also looks at RAG flows, behaviors of agents, things like that. So it sounds like a really interesting company. I'm definitely going to dig into it more. And what's notable is, you know, the companies that the big players acquire says a lot about where they're heading and where their gaps or where
Yeah.
they're looking to accelerate. Right? We could build that ourselves, and why couldn't Claude or Codex write this up tomorrow? Well, yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. Well, I guess we're going to get into that, but that's sort of the leapfrog. So it's not just the Ciscos and the Microsofts and Googles of the world that do acquisitions as part of their innovation strategy. Even the
Yeah, there's a lot to
quasi-tech
acquire.
startups. Yeah.
Right. Some of them with excellent guerrilla marketing that might earn them, let's say, $5 billion in an acquisition hire, as we've spoken about with a certain clawy crustacean. It's a weird world right now, is it not? And I applaud it, because I think we've mentioned it, you and I, before in the past, where it's just kind of mind-boggling to scroll through, pick your Reddit subreddit, and people will say, I got tired of waiting on Microsoft to do something. I didn't like how this was working, so I wrote my own.
Mm-hmm. Well,
It's like
we're in
me
a
with,
world where we can do that. I mean, in
yeah,
theory,
right.
everything is accessible through generated code.
Well, yeah, you can do it. You can one shot pretty much anything agentically these days. Clearly, we've seen that from Anthropic with their compiler. So, but the point is, that's very different than maintaining that software over time. And I
Well,
think that's where the rubber really hits the road.
well, that's the perfect lead in. I didn't bring up Foo Fighters, Prompt Fighters, Foo Prompt Code Fighters, whatever they are, acquisition by OpenAI for that purpose. But it's funny. You and I have kind of come to the same place independently about what about all of the debt that we're creating, and are we sort of creating a false sense of security through AI generated code because we don't really know the quality of that code. Just because
Yeah.
it got generated doesn't mean it's adequately tested, it's adequately secured to the point of acquiring companies like that. And I did this. analysis on kind of where we are with doing AI development,
Mm.
more AI assisted than agent centric yet, because that's where most people are. They're still in that earlier 1/3 of the adoption phase. And especially for junior developers, it's really easy to say, hey, press the button. It generated the code. Good. Check it in. It runs. It seems like it works. Okay, ready to go. There's a kind of a gap, I guess you can say, in AI generated code verification debt, right?
Yeah.
That isn't
Yeah.
being picked up and recognized by everyone. Now, more senior developers are going to know, yeah, but okay, let me go make sure this is not only going to function correctly, but it's code I want.
Well, I want to ask, do you think that even the most seasoned developer isn't going to fall prey to this verification debt that we're starting to talk about here? Because if AI makes you 50% more productive, for example, the organization that you work for isn't just going to get 50% more goodness. It's
Mhm.
going to get more pull requests. It's going to get more documentation, more POCs, and more gambling against the future.
Mhm.
In that the gamble is this isn't going to go wrong. And all of that is like there's not a 1-to-1 correlation between saving time and increasing output or value. And I think people really kind of lose sight of that. And so I love what we're hearing from some folks who I like to read, like Lars Jansen and Kevin Brown, who are
Mhm.
the two guys recently that have been writing about this lately. And I was just citing an idea from there with a 50% increase. And I think they're absolutely right. It is gambling against the future. And it's the same gamble we take with any technical debt, except I think with agentic code, you have a much greater risk of the Rumsfeldian unknown unknowns than you do with traditional technical debt, which is going to be, just increased inertia or complexity leading to more friction, less speed, more headaches, but you see the headaches.
Mhm.
With this,
Well,
you don't.
and to that point is sort of the gap that you miss, whether you're more earlier in your career developer or let's say an experienced developer under pressure, time pressure. Like, okay, well, I'll take that, right? I'll worry about it later.
Right. Right.
Is it isn't just that it's implemented and functional. It's like, how is it implemented? Because when I want to go change something to that, and that's what I've noticed really in the
Mm,
development process is, well, wait a minute, because that's not quite what I was looking for or how I wanted it to come out in
yeah.
terms of an output structure or whatever it might have been. And you realize, well, okay, to make that change, it's actually pretty substantial change to code. And, you can design code to be resilient and not require as much change, whether it's through submodules and structuring and kind of organizing how you architect the code, or you can
Mhm.
just kind of let AI do it. And I think we're still in this earlier phase of, yeah, but what's it generating? And is that good? Because if tomorrow Brad comes up and says, hey, we've got to change the signal process this way for our reports, and it's a re architecting, and you're like, well, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have done it that way originally. And maybe I don't want to do this now, right? That kind of a question. So there can be some pretty big consequences by not knowing what the technical debt is, I guess is my point.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, when you build a product and you have a traditional product, and you have a very clearly defined set of outcomes that you're trying to get to, and you therefore architect it to do that within whatever constraints you already set for that software. It has to
Hmm.
be available in such time, has to be secure for this, blah blah blah, and you know all those things, and so you build that into your spec that you use to build that software. And I've noticed with agentic development in particular that ideas like spec-driven development are game changing, absolutely game changing. However, they don't work the same way that they do with traditional software development. In that, I feel like they're much more compartmentalized and therefore constrained, almost like a cart horse with blinders on that doesn't see that the people yelling at the side of the horse
Mhm.
because we're afraid the horse will bolt.
Mhm. Don't startle
And-
the developer is what you're saying.
Right. You don't want to startle the agent is what I'm
The
saying.
agent, okay. All right.
So don't let them see all the things that might influence them or might scare the crap out of them. And I feel like that's what the current ideas around spec-driven development really are doing, are putting blinders on the horse because we're afraid of it bolting.
So here's the dilemma with that is my belief proven multiple times. Sometimes when you have a theorem, you look for proofs, even if it's not always true. But throughout my career, I've learned that, 51% of planning only occurs in what you write down in a spec or a plan or a doc or whatever. The other 49% comes from implementation. You learn that spec is woefully inadequate when you've completed it, right? And you're ready to, okay, let's go into implementation, however you approach your taking, whether it's with AI or not. And that's one of the benefits of using AI is you can get to an implementation place, let's say not production ready, but you can get there very quickly. You can run parts of it very quickly. You can, we used to block a spec out. Here's a module we're going to just do a dead call to or whatever. So we can start to work with it. We can do that very easily with AI. We can say that's a later feature, right? We'll worry about that next. So it accelerates that learning curve or understanding curve, or let's say intent curve of what you're really looking for, because you're learning through implementation. And that's what I don't like about I'm in planning mode or spec mode or definition mode, like pick your favorite. Claude kind of gets into this question and answer. Do you want to do A, B, C, or D? I feel like I'm in,
therapy.
Yes. Yeah, should I lie down for this question? I'm like, okay, I get it. I see where we're going. It's definitely helpful. But that's planning and implementation aren't collinear. They don't sit there and like I finish one and I start the other and forever that shall be the process. You see where I'm going.
all of my specs that I've completed with Conductor in the Gemini experience, let's call it, have been archived. And do you think I think about them? No. Do you think the agent thinks about them? No. They're
somebody
just
like, hey, don't we have isn't there an artifact for that? Oh, let me see.
Right. Didn't we do this 3 months ago? Oh, yeah.
It's interesting. So here's the other side of the coin is, all right, if it's easy enough to generate new code, it's easy enough to make changes. So what if it's wrong? So what if it's re-architected badly? Not for performance or for scalability, but just in terms of maintainability of code. If creating code, the cost, the time, the effort, the complexity of doing that continues to drop, becomes less consequential. Okay, so what? Maybe I do re-architect half the application in making some changes. And as long as I've got a way to test it and verify it, make sure it works, it's secured and all those things, do I really care?
But that's just it, though, right? If your agentic process can do that, do you really think that all the unit tests that it's going to come up with are representative of the system as a whole, or are they specific to the task at hand?
The blinders, right?
It's the latter. Exactly.
Well, and that's a really good point, which is it's not only edge case, it's the making up our own unknown unknowns. What are the things that could possibly happen, right? That we said, I like to tell myself and tell teams of what are the assumptions we're making? And let's go break those assumptions. Let's say you can't do this backwards. Well, what if you could do it backwards? Let's try it and see what happens, see what breaks. And not just for fun and games. Those are the things, that's how you start to uncover some of those weird conditions, And
but
that's
where innovation occurs. I feel like you're saying, and I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Through consequential change and impact becomes opportunity from an entrepreneurial perspective. I just said this on an article I know Alan Post wrote about the tech media industry, the whole disruption with how Google's, not to get too far afield here, Google's changed the whole SEO calculations and algorithms and how traffic's being distributed. I'm like, yeah, so they're rewriting the rule book. Screw that. Tech media rewrite the rule book. Let's go rewrite it ourselves. You know, don't wait for Google to figure it out and tell us what we have to do. Now, we're still going to have to do part of that anyway, but don't just be a follower waiting for the crumbs to drop off the table, right?
Yeah, under the table, over the table. Always be over the table.
Exactly.
And before we move on from this topic, I want to bring up something that has been personally bothering me lately. This is time for Brad's diatribe. No, it's not that bad.
Should I lay down
time.
again? Is this consultative
no.
time?
This is vertical. Yeah,
Couch?
this is not that bad.
Okay.
But in thinking about the verification debts, that load of verifying is so hard, and it's getting more and more onerous. I feel like every time I build something that I don't know how old our listeners and viewers are, but hopefully they're old enough to know what microfiche is.
Yeah, it's not a species that swims in the ocean. It's not that kind of fish.
No, it is not. No, there's a very strange spelling, and it's on emulsion, and it's basically something you need specialized hardware to use. But the way you use it and what you're using basically is an archive of a lot of information housed in a very small footprint. And to interact with it, you would typically in the past, and I think they still exist in some places, like libraries, if those of us who know that is, and in newspaper offices back in the day, you would go into a room and it would have all these huge monitors, and you would basically scroll through, at high speed. It looked like
literally
warp speed,
scroll
like all the
before they're
stars.
electronic. Yeah.
And it was just overwhelming is the word I would use to describe interacting with that. And I feel like when I'm validating the code or even the documentation of what's written, I am again back as a child, going through one of those microfiches, trying to scroll to find the newspaper article that I'm looking for and know that I haven't missed something important. I don't know that I haven't missed something important. All I know is that I don't have the cognitive ability to actually keep up with the amount of information that's scrolling past as I try to get to what I think is the outcome. So I feel like I'm like mentally just crushing my ability to function as a human being in trying to keep up with this.
Well, I think you're hitting on a really important point. As anything accelerates, and I think we're already here in many other areas, but as the velocity increases of code, of security vulnerabilities, of incidents that happen, of operations problems we have to address, or just debugging, software and creating code, as the velocity of that increases, there'll be a point there won't be enough humans on the planet to observe and look at all that stuff. Maybe we're already there. Like it is impossible. You and I are banging our heads up against an impossible problem we actually can't solve. We can't look at all of it. We can't understand all of it. Even with the best microfiche technology scrolling as fast as we could. I remember when dial-up modems went from 2400 to 9600, I can no longer read it as it scrolls by too fast. We're kind of in that era of, talking about going back a ways. So something has to change. You have to do it differently. And that's, I think, what you're pointing to is that innovation opportunity of like, okay, where's the verification debt bots, agents?
Well, let's ask that question.
Okay.
Let's ask that question. What is that? Because what I see in the industry right now is a technique that we've known for a long time and we use to a great degree, and we call guardrails, which is prototypically, having an adjudicator model, let's say, for instance, evaluating or, having, what would you call them? Battle robots, rock'em sock'em
battle
robots.
Bots? Yeah.
Yes, to sort of battle over quality and completeness and accuracy. And so what I call all of this isn't guardrails, but epicycles.
Hmm.
The way that we very long ago tried to describe the retrograde motion of planets by just drawing another circle on another circle on another circle to try to explain what the heck was going on. And so I honestly think that as long as we have enough compute and the models continue to improve, I think that you could close in on Zeno's paradox, increasingly getting closer and closer by simply adding more of these epicycles to a given process. And that coupled maybe with advancements in like I was just talking about with Teradata for one, advancements like that that improve the context that agents are looking at, we can
Mm-hmm.
get toward a point where maybe you and I don't have to scroll the microfiche. Maybe we just
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm out. Let's step away from the microfiche viewer.
Yeah. At some point, yeah, let's change lenses and look to the telescope now or whatever. Yeah, So
Mhm.
so I think I have a similar perspective, maybe described a different way, which is we tend to think about linear things. I'm going to go get an agent that does code security. I'm going to go get an agent that does guardrails for this. I'm going to go get an agent that does. So I think the future we're headed to is kind of a crowdsourced agent model, which is it's just like if you and I were on a development team of let's say a dozen people or larger, it could be 500 people for that matter, but we
Yeah.
all come to this from a different perspective. I'm looking at all this from how we're going to scale and maintain this. You're looking at this from data quality and how do we do data protection or whatever perspective you're bringing. But you're also bringing a lot more than that. You're bringing a whole bunch of experiences that helped you develop that perspective. So in a crowdsourced model, it's almost like
Mm.
I don't know the right mathematical term, whether it's a Monte Carlo exercise or whatever it is, but
Well,
through
that
that
is a really great,
crowdsourcing, you
great
get to
algorithm.
the answer. You get to the
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
which is okay. Yes, we've all these factors have been considered, and the gotchas and downsides of scalability have been addressed, and none of them are 100%. None of them are at 20%, unless they aren't important. There's some. Okay, great. We've reached an equilibrium, not a three-body problem equilibrium, which is a whole different other issue.
Yeah. Very different.
we can
We
never.
have to like treat the world like it's a two body max
There you
problem,
go. Yeah, if
or
we
we
get
can't
three-body
solve it.
code, we're in trouble, and nobody will ever know where anyone's going to go next. Um,
Hmm.
but it's that sort of a shared mindset across human, computer, AI, agentic
Hmm.
work that comes to the right conclusion. And so that way you have the diversity of thought or diversity of background skills, models, whatever it is that's bringing that. And that's what we
Yeah.
do as humans on teams. Now, we're less, we can't handle the volume that we could in an AI world as humans, but we could with AI. So long story short, I think that's sort of a manifestation of what you're talking about, how that
Yeah,
would
I'm with you.
look.
I don't even know if we need AI to do this. I think maybe we need to
Hmm.
stop chasing determinism and start treating our agentic systems like the weather, and just use ideas like Markov chains, hidden
Hmm.
Markov models to
Mhm.
say, well, if the state of the system is X today, chances are this percentage it'll be that tomorrow.
Mhm.
Therefore, we will act accordingly. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe, I'm not talking about at a macro scale, maybe at a micro scale is to, if we step away from the microfiche viewer and we have these very complex autonomous systems building, documenting, and running themselves, that maybe that's the best, most efficient way to accommodate change and to anticipate change, most importantly. So maybe we're talking about, just a very different idea of what software actually is going forward. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's not what we're doing
interesting.
now, though. I'll tell you that.
By the way, Corey, our producer, excellent producer, podcast producer, just messaged that our audience, 63% of our YouTube audience is between 25 and 44, which sounds about right? They're not only
They're
all going to be in
26
there.
ish, he
Yes,
says.
yes. So that's super helpful to know because if you're speaking to someone who is 4 or 5 years into their career versus 15 or 20 years into their career versus 30 plus into their career. They're coming at it from different perspectives, skill levels, experience levels, all that kind of thing. So that's part of that collective, right? And that's the other thing about
Agreed.
development is earlier in your career, you don't have all the faculties of that judge role that you perform. You've seen some of my posts about this, and that's where mentors or other folks can help speed the development of that by working with other people to develop that skill. And I think you can in an accelerated fashion. So
I applaud IBM, for instance, in bucking the current trends toward cutting off the people coming into the industry, and instead are actually prioritizing bringing new people in, because I think they recognize what you're saying as being critical to being able to have continuity as a business moving forward. You cannot break the supply chain of knowledge and insight and expertise. So love it. We need to do more of that.
It's the, what got you here isn't going to get you there problem, right? So you can't hire people to be trained the same way you or I. I mean, the people coming into the industry 5 years ago weren't trained the same way you and I were when we started our relative points in our career, right? Things are different.
We didn't have elite code.
No, we didn't have open source or what's a repository? There's a lot of things that didn't exist when I started. But the point being is, if you're hiring and if you're seeking a job for how we developed code 5 years ago, that's still happening in organizations. But I think the reason why people aren't hiring entry level is because they don't know what the next kind of person they're going to need and develop and grow as they use more AI. Right. So look at the skills. And that's what I'm trying to point out in this analysis of using, who's the implementer, who's the judge, who are the functions that are this kind of function versus task functions. And someday those could shift around more, right? Could also move into AI. But I think that's that forward thinking you're talking about with IBM, which is they've got to be, I haven't asked them about this, but they've got to be looking at this like, hey, wait a minute. If we cut off the supply chain now, that someday we won't have any more people like we need. And we'll be in the same problem with COBOL that we had, 10 years ago. They're all retired or died or whatever. We can't find any more. We got to retrain the next generation. So kudos for thinking systemically, not short term.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, it's time for the drop.
All right. I'm gonna throw one out here to start with. Microsoft, along with, of course, with some help from GitHub, Microsoft dropped their VS Code 1.1.101 or whatever number it was edition of the code. I'm like, I'm not sure about that numbering scheme, but whatever, it doesn't matter. With the thing of, there's a bunch of features in it, if you will. There's things like hooks, and none of these are necessarily new things, right? There's hooks. There's some behavior controls.
Seriously, hooks has just been added.
Yeah, just been added, right? Okay. So not new.
Just checking.
and as I looked at it, and I was talking to a reporter about it, I'm like, yeah, these are. You could look at this as run-of-the-mill kind of features. Maybe some are catch-up, maybe some are a little bit new, maybe a lot new. But when you look at how they're implementing it, they're taking some of the control plane, like I need to manage what AI is doing. I need to control. I need to make AI accountable for what it's doing. The starts of that, I've thought of it mostly about how you do that in the broader environment in development and test and CI/CD and into production. And they're pulling some of that into the IDE itself. So, I immediately thought of, 2001 and the Star Child and the evolution of humans. And now we're into the third generation of IDEs. Maybe I'm thinking a little too far ahead, but it could signal of a change of this move from code-centric to directing, judging, and controlling and what happens with AI more than just a set of tools. I've got 5 more slash commands in my IDE. Okay, great. So what? Now you got 5 more things to do. I mean, not
Right.
so what.
Right.
They're all good. But it isn't just adding more features, more ornaments on the Christmas tree. It's about changing how we manage the whole process. And I thought that's what's distinctive about this VS Code release. So it's going to go by the wayside. Most people say, oh, yeah, they're catching up here. It's just features. I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I love that. By the way, is it still written in Electron?
I
Is
don't
it still an
know.
Electron app, I mean?
It's probably been rewritten 10 times by now by Boris
Right,
and everybody
right.
else. I don't know.
Call me when it's native Go or Rust. I don't know. So
I doubt it's been rewritten.
I don't think so either. That is like the definition of inertia.
There you go.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a behemoth.
Oh yeah.
So and actually that figures into my drop as well. My preferred editor ID, as you know, is Zed, which is written in Rust. But,
you have principal scruples.
I do. I stand behind them firmly.
Okay.
But I look at it as more of a text editor than an agentic IDE. Same way that I don't use Warp, the terminal emulator, as an agentic terminal. I want my terminal to be a terminal. I want VI motions to be what I use, and I want just my Zed editor to be all those things, not a lot more. And shiny toys. You and I are victims of shiny toys all the time, but I stumbled across one that I really like as like an actual agentic harness, one that I would consider my IDE, in that, as you're talking about, is what I use to state my intent and to shepherd that intent to an outcome, and that is Pi. It's from the Pi Nano guys, and it caught my attention. And this, by the way, it's written in TypeScript, so I don't think I'm against TypeScript with my hatred of Electron.
You'll overlook it for the
I will, absolutely. Yeah. Just semicolons aside. Okay. I can't get over that one. But at any rate, their tagline, it really caught my attention. There are many coding agents, but this one is mine. I just adore that. Because it's like the anti VS Code, because like it's basically completely extensible. You can write extensions, you can write skills, you can write prompts, templating prompts and themes and all that stuff. But it's not, all of that isn't baked in. And for instance, they don't even include an MCP server, and they do that on purpose. I would imagine probably because there are better ways to do this. And I love just the simplicity of it and the extensibility of it, and the fact that I can basically use it to write itself, to build itself from within it. And that's something, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with spec-driven development, and I'm sure everyone here has heard of this GitHub repo called Superpowers. Right, which I think is over like 75,000 stars.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, it's really cool. But what caught my attention with that is within Codex, so OpenAI's UI or ID, whatever we're calling it, agentic harness, to install this superpowers. You're not like doing a curl and a shell pipe. You're basically, I wrote it down. This is what you just type: fetch and follow instructions from this URL. That is how you install it. Is within the agentic harness itself as a English statement.
Interesting. Boy, no
right?
-- parameter -- parameter.
No, and if you look at the install file, which is a markdown file, you will see that it's a lot of text and a lot of explanation, along with some bash commands laid out in there.
Let's dig into that. We should, in an episode, really dig into superpowers and talk about some of the things that it does.
Yeah,
for folks
we
that
could maybe do a live demo, or a live failure of a demo.
Well, I am going to do a little bit of, um, though I'm not qualified to do it, therapy for you to end this episode. And
Mm,
I think one of the reasons why you may be so semicolon adverse goes back to Pascal days of ending all your
okay.
statements with semicolons. I remember those. It's going back a
Uh-huh.
ways too. Maybe it's a little PTSD happening there, but I don't know. I'm just saying it's possible. It could be.
It is quite possible, man. It is quite possible. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, Brad, as usual, it's great fun. Enjoy talking with you and doing this together. We
Always.
hope that everybody, all of our 25 to 44-year-old audience members,
26-ish.
26-ish, enjoy tuning in, and we sure enjoy doing this with you. Send us your feedback. Reach out to us at agentsofdev@futurumgroup.com. And be sure to like, follow, share with your friends. We appreciate everything you do. If you have ideas for topics, guests, things like that, we do have guests that come on, both vendors, but also, there are other experts that we'd love to have come talk with us too. So I'm talking to Tracy Reagan, one of my long-term colleagues in the software open source world, about having her maybe join us for an episode, Brad. And she said, I'd love to do it. So we just have to schedule that. So we'd love to get more guests on too. Thank you for listening. Thanks to Corey and our fabulous production team that helped bring this to you today. Take care, and we will see you soon.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.